Welcome to Eye on America. I'm Michelle Miller. Today we go bi-coastal, sharing stories of Americans making a change. We visit a New York City construction site where women are filling in the gaps of a labor shortage. And we see firsthand how scientists in California and Utah are using beavers to help create wetlands in a dry zone. But first, Meg Oliver meets a New Jersey man holding court with at-risk kids to teach them life skills and help keep them safe.
A steady beat of basketballs fills the air in the small town of Bridgeton, New Jersey. This summer camp is part of Life Worth Living, a nonprofit John Fuga created after his 18-year-old nephew was murdered in 2008.
What's the goal of this program?
The goal is to teach our kids that there's opportunities. Your life is worth living.
In Bridgeton, 17% of the children live below the poverty line.
Every kid is given an opportunity to write their story, and what we want to be is an aid in that. So we provide support for everything, from school to mentoring to anything recreational.
For 14-year-old Zaire Bryant, this is his refuge from reality.
What do you hear or see?
I see people with guns and stuff. I don't like that. That's why I just get away from there.
Nationwide, gun violence is the leading cause of death among children. Over the past 15 years, Fuga has worked with about 10,000 kids, teaching them life skills to survive in an area plagued by crime.
I live in a city where we don't have a recreation center. We have a county jail, a state prison, a federal prison, and a halfway house.
13-year-old Jazir Thompson started participating in the program 2 years ago.
What are you most excited about in life right now?
Right now? Coming to this program. John's really just like a role model. Like he keeps me out of trouble.
Year-round activities from sports and music to the arts, giving them a purpose and helping them set goals for the future.
What does basketball mean to you?
If it wasn't for basketball, I don't know what I'd be doing right now. Like, it's a lot.
What do you want them to know?
I want them to know that I'm gonna make them proud.
We hop across the Hudson River for our next story. Demand for new construction remains high, but there's a labor shortage to meet that need. Nancy Chen shows us how some construction companies are making an effort to recruit sometimes underrepresented workers.
Can you help me out? Thank you.
After about 10 years as a New York City barista, Desiree Camacho decided it was time to nail down a new path: construction.
Even my own mom, when I told her I was interested in doing this, she's like, why would you want to do that? That's a man's job. And I was just like, yeah, well, I need the man's money, so I'm going to go do the man's work, I guess.
And it historically has been a man's job, but more women like Camacho are signing up.
What do you like about this job as it is?
It can all be very different. Like one day you're running pipe, the next day you're like splicing wires. So there's always something new and exciting to learn every day.
Now an apprentice, Camacho enrolled in trade school after spotting an ad on the subway. And for those starting or switching careers, there's been a big payoff. The industry boasts one of the country's narrowest pay gaps, with female construction workers earning about 95% of a male worker's median pay in jobs that often don't require a college degree. And as the number of women in construction has increased more than 50% in a decade to more than 1 million, it's in part because of recruitment campaigns like this one.
One of our big values is legacy.
Would you call women an untapped market?
It's absolutely an untapped market. We are fighting workforce shortages with one hand tied behind our back.
Brian Termale is with the Associated General Contractors of America, which launched a digital outreach urging women to consider construction jobs, attracting tens of thousands of applicants.
And it's everything from the basics, like take the darn pinup calendar off the trailer wall, to more fundamental changes in thinking about how do we create an environment that's more welcoming, how do we listen to new people.
In the Carolinas, Samet Corporation started offering paid parental leave. Women now make up nearly 20% of its workforce. The next generation already building a new phase of construction.
Do you think women could be the answer to the labor shortage?
Absolutely. I mean, we're people, we have hands, we have brains that work. We're here, we're strong, we can do the work also, and like we have been showing up to do it.
After the break, some furry creatures could play a key part in helping ease the Western drought. This is Eye on America. Heading out west now, and scientists have discovered an unlikely weapon in the fight against climate change. Jonathan Vigliotti met up with some researchers studying how beavers can help fight drought and wildfires across the West.
In the drought-stricken American West, an animal long considered a pest is now in demand.
Beavers are largely nocturnal animals, meaning they're most active at night. It's very rare to see them so close.
You ready to go?
Yeah.
I'm ready to get out of here.
Okay, let's do it.
We hiked down a rugged hillside with scientists.
He's a heavy guy.
And a 90-pound trapped beaver to take him to his new home.
Well, what we're hoping for is a place with deep water. Our hope is that they start building dams.
It's the latest chapter for a species that's been desired and despised. For centuries, the nation's largest rodent was a fashion staple.
That's new in hats for winter.
Coveted for its fur.
And of course, the old reliable beaver.
They were nearly hunted to extinction by 1900 until they went out of style and the mammal's population rebounded. But soon, they became a headache for landowners who didn't appreciate the flooding their dams caused. They were trapped and killed. The lucky ones were relocated, flown, and parachuted into remote terrain.
And a most unusual and novel trip ends for Mr. Beaver.
But as mega wildfires fueled by climate change have ripped through the West, researchers made an incredible discovery in the ashes. A beaver dam created an oasis that survived the flames. Scientist Emily Fairfax couldn't believe her eyes.
And I was like, this is unreal. Like, does this happen everywhere?
Where are we right now?
We are just downstream of the main beaver dam, which is holding back an absolutely enormous volume of water.
So without the beaver dam in this area, what would this be like right now?
This would be bone dry and sandy, which is what it was before the beavers moved in.
As Fairfax showed in an animation she created, when beavers build dams, they prevent rainwater and snowmelt from draining down rivers and into oceans. The result is a natural fire break and reservoir, capable of storing water for years and releasing it slowly over time. This 10-foot tall beaver dam, a web of sticks and mud in Atascadero, California, created the only lush landscape for miles.
Beavers move in here and they slow this water down. A lot of it does go into recharging the groundwater, and that's what we're pumping for irrigation. That's what we use for our food. That's what we use for our lawns. A lot of the water in California is not from snowmelt, it's from the groundwater. And these beavers are recharging it for us. So they're sort of depositing water into the bank that we take out at a later date.
The West's historic drought and Fairfax's research has led to a reckoning for farmers and landowners. Beavers can be good. But with so many of them removed from the landscape, reintroducing them now requires help from humans.
We're here in Utah, just outside of Salt Lake City, and this morning we're building a beaver dam.
Volunteers are now building starter dams, what's known in the industry as beaver dam analogs. The owner of this ranch heard about the new program and wanted in. Nick Bowis is a lead on the project.
Why do beavers need human help to build a dam?
Well, a lot of times, if it's too shallow, they're just kind of like walking hot dogs for predators. They need deep water to swim. They're very graceful in deeper water. So beavers, what they do is they get in here and they just scoop the mud up. And they just come and like grab a whole bunch, push it with their chest and hands, and they just work it in all the crevices.
This is very similar to what a beaver would naturally do.
I would get on my belly and push it in, but I don't want to get that wet.
It's amazing all the steps that we have to do to help out something that should be a natural process.
But the most challenging step is finding the right candidates for release. That's where Nate Norman with Utah State University comes in. He traps beavers from land where they're considered nuisances, then takes them back to this beaver lab where he weighs them, checks them for injuries,
real minor little knots,
chips them for tracking and research, and then places them in what he calls a beaver bunker, where they wait until their permanent home, the one we've been prepping, is ready. Which brings us back to where we began. On this day, we're releasing 2 beavers. The hope is they'll soon start a colony of their own. More than 1,000 analog dams have been successfully resettled, with more in the works.
It's kind of a win-win. You know, we deal with the nuisance problem at the same time trying to use an animal that's incredibly good at restoring streams, putting them to work.
The North American beaver, once just a pest, now a climate change engineer.
Switching gears now to an issue many of us across the nation deal with: stress. In our nation's capital, Scott McFarland spoke with 2 senators recovering from recent strokes to hear lessons they learned on how to achieve a better work-life balance.
I couldn't get a few words in before my doctor said, you need to get to the emergency room.
They said it was a good thing I came in because we could see some bleeding in the brain.
New Mexico's Ben Ray Lujan and Maryland's Chris Van Hollen each suffered a stroke. Both Democratic senators say they survived because they sought help after the first warning signs. For stroke, those include lack of balance, dizziness, vision problems, and slurred speech. Doctors say many ignore those symptoms. But when Lujan was rushed to the ER, doctors took immediate action.
This last scan that you got, your brain's still swelling. We need to go in there and help you out.
He underwent intensive, invasive brain surgery, followed by weeks off the job in rehab, which continued through the spring as he returned to work. Just 2 months after Lujan's return to a standing ovation at the Capitol, Senator Van Hollen had just started a campaign speech. At first, he felt fine, but as you can see, he leans on the podium to steady himself.
Oh, I felt lightheaded. I had a pain in my neck, and my ears were popping a little bit like you're on an airplane.
Doctors found a tear in a vein in the back of his head. No surgery, but Van Hollen needed a week of hospitalization, followed by rest at home. Like so many people recovering from illness or injury, they felt an urgency to return to work. And with 50 Republicans and 50 Democrats in the Senate, just one absence can stall anything.
There's a question of getting the votes on some big pieces of legislation, but I think the lesson for all of us is you got to look out for your health.
Dr. Celine Gounder says demanding situations can take a toll.
We do certainly see a link between stress and high blood pressure, whether you're getting enough sleep.
By Senate standards, Lujan and Van Hollen are young. Lujan just turned 50, Van Hollen 63. In the Senate, anxiety can be easy to find, while rest is not.
We do have very stressful jobs. We're running in a million different directions.
The senators say, like so many of us who have busy jobs and busy lives, they need to set aside time to do less.
You need to find a way to make time, whether it's a little extra time in the morning, in the afternoon, or just catching your breath. Make time to keep yourself healthier.
It is all too common for us to see patients in the hospital who have just deferred their care, even when there have been warning signs.
These 2 senators survived and now have their own warning for others.
When you're feeling these strange symptoms, don't just brush them off, which we so often do.
Just keep an eye on folks, and if you see a sign as well, instead of just feeling a sign, work with that person to get them checked and get them in right away too.
After the break, we head to the Windy City, where rescue workers are trying to save our fine feathered friends. That story is next. Welcome back. Skyscrapers define our skylines, but they can be dangerous to high-flying birds. Lauren Victory joined a group of volunteer bird rescuers in Chicago.
Chicago at dawn can be dazzling, sometimes too dazzling for those flying through.
We're going to walk down that street.
At sunrise, the Chicago bird collision monitors go on the hunt. Our glistening buildings are magnets for migrating birds. Their glass can stop some right in their tracks.
These are more of the Tennessee warblers.
Annette Prince runs the volunteer group that searches nooks and crannies for hours downtown every day. Many discoveries,
I think he's dead,
are recovery missions. These colorful creatures are often coming from places north of us, heading to South America.
It's really sad to see that this little guy made this whole trip and he's dead.
The specimens are bagged, labeled, and sent off to the Field Museum for research.
Why is it important to pick up the deceased birds
The dead birds are important because we use them to document the scope of the problem.
A problem Prince hoped would take flight when Chicago aldermen passed an ordinance requiring the Department of Planning and Development to consider bird safety when approving construction projects with glass. Dead bird in hand in front of City Hall, we asked her about progress.
We're waiting on Chicago to implement it. They really have dragged their heels for several years.
So the grim work continues.
This is a little Tennessee warbler.
But not all that's found is lost.
Oh my goodness.
Inside this bag is an injured bird on its way to rehabilitation.
Paper bags can't suffocate anything. It's air porous, so they're in a dark, quiet space where they're able to sit still.
A short time later, Prince spotted another little guy needing help.
He must have hit this glass window here.
In all, her team rescued more than 80 feathered friends alive before rush hour even hit.
Listen up, all you baseball fans of the trash pandas and flying squirrels. We close our show with an inside look at the business of branding, specifically minor league teams across this country. Chris Van Cleve introduces us to the lifelong friends responsible for those unforgettable names. You could say they're knocking it out of the park.
Baseball is back in Beloit, Wisconsin. Even on a Tuesday night in the middle of the summer, more than 1,000 fans filled the brand new $33 million stadium, home to the Sky Carp, formerly known as the Snappers.
Why change the team name? New ownership, new stadium, and just kind of a fresh start, right? Beloit Snappers in general, the brand had been kind of fading. They only had 7 season ticket holders before we took over ownership back in 2019.
7 season ticket holders?
7. Count them on your hands, 7 season ticket holders.
With so few fans, this minor league affiliate of the Miami Marlins needed some big league help. Maria Valentine is the team's vice president of entertainment.
We wanted something that would get the community excited again about baseball in Beloit. It's the only way that this team is going to survive is if people are excited.
Excitement is what these two lifelong best friends do. Jason Klein and Casey White are buzzmasters, founders of San Diego-based Brandios.
We met on the playground. I was eating paste.
I was baffled that you were eating paste. I don't know.
I was like, let's be friends.
Their business grew out of their desire to create the ultimate high school mascot. That's Jason in the costume. He spent his college years as Big Al the Elephant, the University of Alabama's mascot, while both studied art and design.
So we sent 150 letters to every minor league baseball team across the country, and one got back to us and they said, if we like it, we'll buy it. And we turned my bedroom into an office at my parents' house. Brandios began.
A humble start for a pair that has changed the game one name at a time, taking tired teams and creating a viral experience that's consistently left fans wanting more, like the Richmond Flying Squirrels, the El Paso Chihuahuas, the Akron Rubber Ducks, the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp, and those Beloit Sky Carp, local slang for the Canadian geese that call the city home year-round.
We wanted people to step into this world, to immerse themselves in this like 9-inning vacation.
It sounds a lot like what you're doing is trying to build a community.
Yeah. Minor league baseball has always said they're the front porch of the community. Our job, I see, is to bring dignity to these towns. The challenge for us is how do we go into the community, figure out what that story is, and then celebrate it by creating this whole world that reinforces that thing that they're proud of.
And then you're creating an experience around that story. It's kind of the Disneyfication of that team.
So the idea is that no matter what type of day you've had prior to the baseball game, you can drive and step into this whole other world where there's mascots playing with your kids, right? There's on-field entertainment, there's silly names, there's promotions, and they all reinforce everything that you love about your community, and that it's celebrating some story that means a lot to you as a local.
The next pitch is lined into left field.
Arguably their biggest success blasted off outside of Huntsville, Alabama.
The ownership group hesitated a lot using the word trash in their name. I don't want trash to be associated with our name. You can't have trash. That's not going to be a good look. It's not going to sell.
But oh, did it sell? The Rocket City Trash Pandas, with their logo featuring a raccoon in a trash can rocket ship, exploded just as baseball ground to a halt. The Trash Pandas' first season canceled in 2020 due to the pandemic.
We sold $2.3 million in merchandise before playing a Trash Pandas game and helped keep us afloat there. It kept all of our employees, full-time employees here. It kept the business from going under, and we were able to get by.
What does losing your inaugural season cost a franchise?
Probably close to $15-17 million.
But since then, the Trash Pandas are a grand slam. They boast some of the highest attendance in the minors, and their swag has outsold everyone. What happened when the pandemic hit?
Pandemic hits, there's no baseball. Yeah. No baseball means no fans, no money, no grandiose. And so we had to do a Hail Mary.
The guys known for reinventing brands had to reinvent their own, creating an online forum, the Clink Room, where aspiring designers from around the world can bring their visions to life on the 80mm canvas of a baseball hat.
Literally saved our business.
It saved our business.
These are hats that don't actually have any tie to anything in reality.
Right.
They're still tied to stories, and local stories, a lot of them. I mean, look, there's a lot of puns and a lot of sort of just goofball fun ideas.
Let's do it! And their goofball ideas are still a hit on the field. Their newest success is taking flight back in Beloit. Season ticket sales are up more than 6,000%. And in July alone, this Beak Boutique sold more Sky Carp stuff than the Snappers ever did.
That looks good.
That's a lot of money for a single A baseball team.
100%. It's more money than this team probably generated in 5 years potentially. Those guys out in San Diego are a big part of that, right? They're the reason we have the buzz and the excitement for people to want to come.
For more stories like these and live coverage of breaking news 24/7, stream us right here on CBS News. I'm Michelle Miller. Thank you for watching Eye on America.
This episode of Eye on America is sponsored by Amazon.